So maybe you could start a little bit with your background and how you fell into trading.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I started about 8 years ago, and what I started with was, as I mentioned, like my first resource was the how to make money in stocks and the IBD. So I was getting the IBD newspaper basically, and only thing I was doing, I was just basically grabbing all these charts from IBD 50, IPO leaders, stock, the sector leaders, and all these lists, and I was just putting into my manual, let's say, notes or text files and so on and so forth. And I started with this classical, like trying to identify cup with handle, flat base, and basically nothing extraordinary. Just looking at trying to look at fundamentals, earnings, sales, and really what the O'Neill was teaching in his books. And then later on, like in the years afterwards, also IBD came with that option to export all the
Hmm.
names from IBD Digital. So at that time also I didn't want to really, because the my resources were scarce, so I didn't really want to invest too much into other tools that I didn't know since I wasn't profitable. So buying like market search, that time Market Smith was really not an option for me. And so what I just did, basically I took all these names, put it into my own Excel spreadsheet, and I would put like my own screens on it, just sort it by relative strength or some other parameters, and then I'd be going through it every week, on the weekends, week by week, just marking it like 8 weeks, 6 weeks, first base, second base, third base, and cup fit handle and all these patterns, and then trying to identify later on as you progress, as you advance in your career, you start looking more into those nuances, also like some advanced pivots, pullback buys, and all these criteria.
Hmm.
And at that time, maybe I was when I was doing this, week by week. At that time, I was kind of thinking it might be waste of time, just every year, just every week, spending just a huge amount of time just manually marking the charts. But when I look at it now, back like 5 years back, it was maybe the most beneficial thing that I could have done, going
Yeah.
just through the charts manually.
Well,
And
you know what? It's funny because, there's a lot of stories of these manual processes that kind of really do great at training. David Ryan, before he won three back-to-back U.S. investing championships, was talking about how he was Xeroxing, the charts for model books, and he was just making copies of charts, and that's how he kind of learned, hey, these are the patterns that you got to know. Tom Dorsey, he was talking about how he marked up those point and figure charts, and it was all manual. And even Bill O'Neill, as much as he had these screening materials available to him, he a lot of times was using the paper. He was just going through the stock tables and recognizing, okay, what things were up the most, what was the volume like, and so yeah, I think sometimes the tedious part pays off in the end. So it sounds like that was the case for you.
exactly, if you just focus on price and volume, that's all you need. You don't have to bother with all these other technical indicators like MACDs, RSIs, and so on and so forth. And of course, it was not end of the journey. Then I joined also the Minervinis platform and the program, which provided again like a little more like the microscopic view and really build a solid foundation in the risk management and how to handle the exposure and so on. And currently, since also I don't have really a trading community around me here in Czech Republic, I'm a member of a champion team trading with Leaf. So with Leafs already, so we share a lot of ideas there. Also, trying to encourage the like-minded traders. So maybe also I would recommend like if there's anybody like me that needs to build a community and come
Hmm.
to join us. And
Well, and I guess that's the good thing, right? We have all these communities available. I mean, we've got a great community here at IBD. You've got the championship, the Minervini. Again, we're all kind of using a similar system, but there's a lot to learn about how to use that system and how to make it kind of your own. So maybe you could get into some of the details of, you know, what was your learning process like, and where are you at now? So now that you've gone through that manual process, you know how to recognize the base patterns. There's certainly those elements of position sizing and selling rules, implementing the rules. How did you kind of get to the point that you're at now, where it again, got you the performance that you're looking at today? Are you more, first of all, before we get to that, maybe I should ask, are you more of a swing trader, position trader? What is kind of your time frame of holding?
I'm more of a swing trader and leaning on this shorter time frame. So
Okay.
currently, if you look at my statistics, my average time for winners is about 15 days. For
Okay.
losers, it's gonna be maybe like 6 days, 5 days, something like that.
Hmm.
So, but of course, it's average. Of course, if there is a big winner, I'm able to hold it for 3, 4 months. But cutting it short is the main factor. So.
So again, that does take some of the the IBD traditional style and squish it down a little bit in terms of time frame.
Exactly.
So
I mean,
what kind of led you to that, and how are you making your buy and sell decisions with that shorter time frame?
I think it all comes down to, as you go through your trading career, kind of like trying to build in what fits you the most from a mindset perspective, and also that it works in the math, in the stats that you're comfortable with, right? So also traditional started, trying to classic David Ryan, Bill O'Neill, trying to hold the names for 1.5 year and trying to hold it for a little longer. But then also I started noticing like also later on the math, like the risk reward ratios didn't fit very well. You have to adjust and find let's say the space where you're making the most gains. So
Hmm.
for me, it proved to be like this kind of a midpoint. Of course, not that short as a day trader, but throughout the years, I was kind of shortening my time frame since I'm very bad at selling at the tops. So I'm very quickly de-risking at least first portions of my positions into those first breakouts, and later on, trying to free roll as much as possible.
Yeah. And I guess a big benefit sometimes to that swing trading idea, and again, if you're not holding as long, is that you kind of reduce your drawdowns. Have you found that to be the case?
Absolutely. And maybe also like maybe one nuance that maybe might help some traders, like what I try to do with these positions that I'm really like locked in, that I'm convinced that it's gonna be big winners. I kind of try to keep, I try to visualize things also, like try to put on a paper really like, these buckets that I have. Okay, this is a 20%. I have here like the 5 buckets, which makes 100% total. And in this last bucket of tiny positions, I try to keep this free rolling, maybe 2% positions, which will equate at the end, maybe, quarter of my portfolio, because
Hmm.
I don't want to lose a touch with the name.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the point of the risk management, it's not something that I really have like almost in front of me like every day. It's like kind of thing of my daily routine that I'm kind of keeping. If I get stopped out on all the positions, what's gonna be the worst case scenario?
Hmm. Right. Totally makes sense. And again, risk management is something that is just a theme that you hear from so many great traders. It's, from Warren Buffett, long term to the shortest term trader. If you don't have the risk management, then you just don't usually stay in the game for very long. Now, another concept here that I think is interesting about how you do what you do is you talk a lot about themes, but not necessarily how most people think of themes. A lot of people think of the fundamental themes, a thematic approach. Okay, I'm really focused on AI right now. That's the hot thing. But for you, it's not just about the fundamentals, it's also about the technical themes. So could
Uh,
you
uh,
kind of describe what that is for you?
yeah,
Technical
absolutely.
themes.
I mean, you have always like theme can be various things, right? Theme can be, as you're saying, it could be group, it can be a sector, it could be a type of a name, it could be mega caps, small caps, it could be new IPOs from this year. And then you have the themes which are technical themes. So always, of course, unless the market's in bearish territory and nothing's working, you always have the kind of a set where you have the most probability which might work at a time. You can see it easily from your watch list. If you have watch list of few hundred names, you see how they're behaving, so you can see like what is the most common occurring pattern that's working right now. It can be, for example, throughout this year, starting in a Q1, there was, as we were turning into this stage two uptrend in many names, you found that a lot of pullbacks started working. A lot of names were finding the support at moving averages, and if you combine it with the group sector theme, these two together, it can produce like a dramatic result over time. So, for example, if you have this chart here, it was around January, February. You could see a lot of the names like retracing back. For example, ARM was the one that I was trading, and you had a precedence of SMCI and NVIDIA, which was a group theme which were rocking at the time. And SMCI came, ARM, yes, you can see the SMCI rocking, and then the ARM, if you look at back at the chart. I traded it from the IPO from before, but then before the earnings, yeah, you had this, and then prior to the earnings, on January 5th, you had this when the name retraced. I think it was a 21-day, 20-day moving average. It found the support there, and it was very like trading near a danger point. So my total risk at that point was maybe 2%, and very quickly, like it found support very quickly. I was maybe 5-6% up, and from there you have a lot of leverage. What do you want to do with the name? You can take a partial profits, you can move your stops. If you're really short term, you can just turn it over and buy some other name. So this is
And since there was such a huge move on earnings here, maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because for swing trading, sometimes earnings can be such a wild card, right? Especially, I mean, this earnings season, we've seen some phenomenal moves. 20%, 30%, 40% has not been out of the cards for a lot of these stocks. But at the same time, you can see some really ugly moves to the downside, 20%. And for a swing trader, that can be really devastating. So you kind of had a little bit of a cushion going into that earnings report. So how do you handle earnings? Do you scale back, or what do you do?
So at that position here, because I had, as I said, my first position was from that the base prior, so it was already going back into 2023, and I added on at this point that we just went through, and going into earnings, I descaled like most of my positions, so I was back maybe to 1/3 of my original position, and yeah, it also, as you correctly said, there was some cushion that even if it kept, I mean, the option market was not showing that, of course, we're gonna gap up 50%. If we gap down 50%, of course, it could have been a little bit more damaged, but still nothing that it would destroy my account.
Right. And so you scaled back. Maybe it's a good idea to kind of get a sense of your position size. Some people go with a lot of positions and keep it small. Some people go with large. What is your rough position size that you're going with on a lot of these ideas?
My optimal is 25% of my portfolio.
Okay.
Here, however, it was lower because going from the 2023, I was going into a year, I was almost in cash. So here I was just starting to build up the position. So here maybe my original might have been maybe like 10, 12%. So if I took it down like 2/3, it was maybe to 4% of my portfolio or something like that.
Right. And then are you kind of scaling in and scaling out of positions? You're taking profits on the way up, or are you adding to things as they're working?
Scaling up and adding up, it's always like I try to approach it as a new position. There's always
Okay.
must be a reason. There must be proper pivot developed. I won't just like blindly, add to my
Yeah,
position.
because it's up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There's also
Okay.
something maybe a lot of new traders are struggling with, just that FOMO, seeing the name going up and trying to chase everything.